So we're the Youth Caucus of Democrats Abroad France, so sort of the youth wing. Here with, so I'm Victoria Gonzalez, as you can see. Max Dunitz is also here. And so as young voters abroad, we decided to invite two nonpartisan Get Out the Vote organizations today, the Campus Election Engagement Project and Vote from Abroad. So we have here from the Campus Election Engagement Project, Daniel Coley, the Georgia director. Thanks for being with us, Daniel. And from Vote from Abroad, Linda Edison, and Roy Kohavi. So Linda based in the UK and Roy based in Israel. And so I think that's it. Yes, and before we begin, maybe we could go around and say where we're based and where we vote. We can go in any order. I mean, I can start. I'm based in Paris, and I vote in Massachusetts.
I think you have to call on folks because we're not presented in any specific order.
Oh, we don't have all the same order.
Yes.
Okay, well, maybe Parker?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Parker. I'm based out of Helsinki, Finland, and I am a Georgia voter.
Yay.
Laura?
I'm in London and I vote in Massachusetts.
Oops, two Lauras.
Oh, sorry, Laura. Sorry, Laura.
That's okay. I'm Laura Mosdale. I'm based in London as well. I'm the co-chair with Linda Addison and Elizabeth Kelly of voter registration for Democrats Abroad UK, and a huge fan of the Campus Election Engagement Project. And I voted Minnesota.
Linda? I'm going in the order of my screen here.
I also live in London, and I do global comms for Vote from Abroad, and I vote in Michigan, which went, well, I'm not going to say that. We did really well this year. We turned out the vote, I mean.
Yeah.
Roy, I presented you, but you didn't present yourself, so.
Yeah, hi, I'm Roy. I'm in Israel, and I vote in Washington State.
Okay. Tilly?
I'm California. I live in Paris, and I started working for Ossoff for the primaries because I liked what he had to say. So just want to keep going and get him elected.
All right. Max, hi.
Hello? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Max. I am based in Paris and I vote in Michigan.
All right, Pierre.
Hi, I'm Pierre. I vote in Connecticut, and I'm in the east of France, Strasbourg to be specific.
Susan, hi.
Hi, so my name is Susan. I'm from Los Angeles, California, and I've been living in France since the mid-'80s, and I'm based in Marseille right now.
All right, and then Griffith.
Hi, I'm from Maryland, and I currently live in Manchester, but I used to live in Oxford. That's how I came to the UK as a student many years ago. And so I'm actually part of the Oxford and the Northwest England chapters. But yes, I vote in Maryland. Thank you for organizing this. It means a lot to me.
Great. Thanks for being here. And Nosheen, who just joined.
Hi, sorry, I'm with Campus Election Engagement Project. So I'm just here to support Daniel in talking about Georgia, and I know Laura very well.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for being here. Do you also vote in Georgia?
No, I'm located in New Jersey.
Okay.
But I work with SEEP on all projects, so I'm excited to be helping on this.
All right, and okay, so it's moved around on my screen, but I think I've done everyone except Daniel. And that way I can give you the floor to talk about the runoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I just first want to say like thank you for having me, and it's really a pleasure to meet everyone here. I'm sorry about not having my camera on. Georgia's weather is very very odd, and we are still recovering from kind of a storm that we had, and my internet's been kind of down all week. I don't know if you can hear the truck outside. They're actually working on the cables right now because my apartment building's main, like attached to the main power. So that's just why I don't have my camera on. I hope you can hear me okay because I'm working off a hotspot.
We can hear
But I'm
you
very
fine.
awesome. But I'm very excited to be here and kind of talk about Georgia. I'm incredibly excited about what's going on here. We, of course, had a very successful November 3rd election. Our voter turnout was among some of the highest in the country. In fact, our youth turnout was actually, the highest in the entire country, with 21% of our vote share coming from youth voters. And of course, those are people aged from 18 to 29. We saw incredibly high numbers in certain counties that I've never seen numbers like that before. We, of course, increased our voter turnout by over 1 million votes in this election. And we hope to kind of continue that energy going up into the runoff. I'm kind of the first, full-time dedicated Georgia director for the Campus Election Engagement Project. My time with CEEP has been absolutely amazing. It's been so rewarding to kind of see, the process and what goes into kind of mobilizing Georgia voters and learning these new networks and kind of building them up. The previous semester, college semester, we had 4 fellows throughout Georgia. And once I, started in April and kind of worked throughout the summer, we were able to hire 24 fellows at the different college campuses in the state of Georgia. And they all, of course, worked very tirelessly to do a lot of events. Of course, with COVID, they had to be COVID conscious. They had to make sure that, people were able to be socially distanced while also trying to facilitate a safe space for people to, kind of discuss what's going on. So, with that work with CEEP, it's been very beneficial, of course, because we saw a lot of turnout, especially amongst college voters. And we hope to kind of continue that throughout the runoff. I was able to keep on about 15 of my fellows. Every single one of my fellows that were not graduating or picking up full-time jobs actually were able to return and do that really awesome work because we're really excited right now. It's, kind of all hands on deck. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Nasheen. She's been so absolutely amazing in helping me get everything, set up and making sure that I'm supported down here in Georgia. And I want to thank everyone here to, just hear me rant and go on. I usually talk very passionately about Georgia because I'm just very proud of what happened here. And I'm open for any questions, before I kind of continue about the fellows. Thank you. I also really love our voter guides. You want to have any quick questions before I tell you more about the fellows program?
No, I think we're dying to hear about what you guys do and how it works and how you get students engaged. We want to learn from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the most proud about all the work that I've done with CEEP and, kind of in Georgia. The thing I'm most proud of are my fellows. They are very, very hardworking, dedicated students who, of course, just want to see, their peers and their families and just people across the state more mobilized. I was actually able to hire a lot of non-political science majors. I have a biochemistry major, I have an architect major, and these people just want to see great positive things in their communities. So when you have a lot of these other people, we have a lot of brainstorming sessions. Of course, we have our statewide calls, and they're actually able to kind of put resources together, put their heads together to create these really awesome creative events that gets the vote out. One of my fellows made an event where it was a board, it was a pledge board, and students were able to come up and kind of write on a piece of paper, I pledge to vote because. And why I love this so much was it kind of put it in perspective why a lot of people, voted. Some people put, I vote because my grandmother was not allowed to vote. I vote because I want a world where my niece and nephews can grow up and have a very positive experience. I vote because I want to ensure that I have a country where I can build a business. Everyone kind of got to be able to put why they vote, and it put a lot of perspective on it. And when we see a lot of these, dialogues and safe spaces being opened up for people to kind of discuss why it's important to them, it really does put it in perspective. A large, marketing thing right now, and during the general, of course, a large thing that people are kind of talking about are, vote. If you're not going to vote for yourself, vote for someone that you love, vote for someone that you care about, and vote for those who don't have a voice. And that was a really big thing the fellows push. And so in all their events, whether it be in person or online or virtual, anything of that sorts, they had it to where It was a safe space for anyone to come in, and that's where, you know, SEEP's dedication to being nonpartisan comes in very heavily. We want to ensure that people on both sides, of course, you know, get to voice what's going on. They get to understand what's going on, who's running in the elections. And I know someone mentioned in the chat about our voter guides. Those have been a huge success this year, especially moving into the runoff. We were, of course, able to put, of course, John Ossoff and David Perdue and Raphael Warnock and Kelly Loeffler on two different voter guides, and it had information from both their campaigns and the interviews that they had. So of course it's nonpartisan because of the information is directly from the campaigns. This information also is of course cited and sourced, so you can actually click on the hyperlink on the guides and it'll take you right to where we got that source. And I've gotten reports from a lot of my fellows as they, you know, hand them out on campuses that have been very beneficial, because it also has very key important information about the runoff election. I know a lot of everyone else, I don't know if I heard anyone else who votes in Georgia, but runoffs aren't really that common here. It's a lot of, you know, people kind of now understanding what a runoff is, and it's a part of that, you know, that push to educate who's in the runoff, when the runoff is, you know, what are the rules and regulations when it comes to the runoff, who's eligible to vote in it. There's what are we going to do about the 29,000 people who are not of voting age, who are now voting age, sorry, 23,000, who are now, you know, coming in out of high school, who are now able to vote in the upcoming election. Kind of there's a huge push to register them. So right now, you know, my fellows, we of course are not on campus. We have moved completely to a virtual, you know, space to be able to engage students, and they're utilizing social media pages to do so. And I think it's working. We are starting to pick up a little bit of steam. Of course, we had to battle some election fatigue, and kind of everyone was getting tired and really, you know, wanted to have a great Thanksgiving. So we took some time off, of course, but we're hitting the ground running again. It's very exciting.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for presenting the work that you do. I think there's only a handful of Georgia voters on the call, but even for the rest of us, I think it's helpful information. Maybe to focus on just the general stakes of the runoff and why this election isn't, why we should reach out to the Georgia voters, and then we can move on to the technicalities of voting, and that I think will be Roy and Linda to focus on what's the difference between absentee ballot from abroad and an absentee ballot in Georgia, that sort of thing.
We do have some new people joining the call. So Samantha Miller has just joined, and Tora Galway, who is, I think, in Italy. So Samantha, would you like to say hello and tell us where you are and where you vote from? Maybe she can't hear. I don't know where she's. Samantha, you're muted if you're trying to speak. Tora, do you want to say hi and tell us where you're dialing in from and where you vote?
Yes, hello. I vote in New York, not Georgia, unfortunately, and I live in Italy, as you just said.
Good to see you. Okay. All right. And so I was, see, now it's I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I was trying to share also the links to the CEEP website, but the link has also been provided in the chat by Linda Adison. So there are some really great voter guides, voter information guides up there. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for adding the link in there. I was actually going to do it myself, but yeah. And I know Linda mentioned that they're both in English and in Spanish, which was really, really awesome and very beneficial. We do have some predominantly Spanish-speaking campuses here, especially in Dalton State. So I was really excited about that. But kind of to get into the stakes of the election and why it's so serious. And of course, this is something that my fellows have been working very hard to kind of push. Why it's so important. Of course, we seen the highest turnout in voter history here in Georgia in the general. But the margins in the election were only about 12,300 votes. it is incredibly, incredibly important that we have the highest turnout possible, because with elections being so close, it is very, very decisive. And in some counties, they were won with 25 votes. And I think that if we can really start to target those people who either didn't show up, either they weren't registered in time, especially those 23,000 college or high school students that were not of voting age during the time of the election, to be able to now vote in the election. And anything can change the outcome of this election, especially with two contested Senate seats. And I'm just looking in the chat right here. Let's hear more about Yeah. So kind of delving into that, but in the lens of my fellows. So the work that they do right now is engaging their peers on any way that they can get that information. So right now they're working with a lot of their campuses and their civic engagement departments, and they're doing a Instagram lives and Facebook lives right now, kind of communicating with the administration, communicating with faculty and other student groups, and kind of creating these dialogues on a social media platform so everyone can kind of tune in, ask questions in real time, and get answers to those questions. Another thing that a lot of campuses were doing right before we kind of went off campus, they had a lot of tabling events, a lot of registration tables, and a lot of just overall runoff education events. One of my campuses, Kennesaw State University in Northwest Georgia, actually had 8 simultaneous registration tables on the campus at one time, just because of how large the campus was. They actually organized it within 2 days, and they were able to have 25 volunteers, because we are very, very passionate here about the election. Some other things that my fellows are putting together, it's honestly quite amazing. They are putting together rallies for the candidates to be able to come and speak at. Of course, nonpartisanly, for both candidates to be able to, on both sides, to be able to come and speak. They're also scheduling, roundtables with communicate with them, because it's no secret that college students were the deciding factor in this election. And so they're really capitalizing on what's going on inside of the atmosphere of everyone kind of anxious. They're kind of, they're very tired, of course, but my fellows have done a very, very good job of continuing to do social media campaigns, doing on-campus events if they can. One of my other fellows, said, we want to design a postcard and send it to all the students while they're back home. So she's designing those postcards, and they're going to send them out to students so they can get them tangibly in their hands from students that they go to school with, telling them about the important runoff election dates. I also love postcards as well. I get a few myself, and I actually kept them all from when we were voting in the general. But it's the creative ideas that my fellows are coming up with that I believe will actually be able to energize the youth, get them back out, mobilize them, and we can have that high turnout that we had in the general, and possibly even more. They've worked tirelessly. I'm very proud of them. Some of them lead community soup kitchens. Some of them, one of my fellows in North Georgia actually leads the food pantry. So they're ensuring that everything that they do, they also kind of include, registration and education. Because I do think that we can do it again. I do think that we can energize the youth voters. And with my fellows and with SEEP, and of course with you guys and any help and support that we get, we can continue to grow and continue to mobilize. And next time in next elections, we'll have more and more people, voicing their opinions and submitting their votes.
Great. Thank you so much, Daniel, for the work that your fellows do. Seems pretty impressive. I think it'll be interesting to follow what you do and see what we can learn. I think Laura had her hand up for a question.
Yeah, this is a question for Daniel. I'm just kind of curious about all these Georgia college students and whether there's going to be a difference in the way they voted on November 3rd and the way they're planning to vote on January 5th, and how you're dealing with that. Because I presume a lot of students were able to vote in person on November 3rd, but nobody's going to be back on campus on January 5th. So are you sort of addressing sort of the mechanics of how somebody who voted in person can vote by mail? I'm just wondering how you're sort of navigating this really unusual situation with where people are going to be on election day on January 5th.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Thank you, Laura. So I've actually kind of instructed my fellows, and we've kind of sat down and talked about, what are the challenges going to be, not only with an election during a pandemic, but also an election when no one's on campus. And right now we are heavily stressing, absentee voting, as well as, if you are going to vote and you're going to do it in person, try to do it as early as possible. Early voting starts December 14th here in Georgia. So we're kind of having a huge push on alternative ways of voting. A very good thing about kind of Georgia and our university system, a lot of our schools, they have a large population of these schools have students that actually live in a very close radius, whether that be 30 miles, 40, 50. So it's actually not too hard for a lot of students, especially here in the state, to be able to actually go and vote either back home or the polling place that is around their campus. Not every campus, of course, has a voting poll, unfortunately. So they are, surrounding churches, surrounding community centers. So they are still allowed to go there and vote in person there. But one of my fellows, of course, every time I have a call with them, their homework from me is to always go and feel the pulse of what's going on in their campus and going on in their communities. And a lot of them actually reported that because there was such a high percentage of, absentee voting and early voting here in the state before, because it's fresh in our minds and we understand how to do it, they're actually hypothesizing that we'll actually have more participation in mail-in voting and early voting because of how easy and accessible it is. A figure that I don't really hear a lot of people talking about, but 78% of all the votes cast in Georgia were actually from mail-in or early voting. Our election day was very abnormal. The average wait time, I believe, was anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. And I know when I early voted, I stood in line for 3.5 hours. So I think that we're going to see a huge, bump again in early voting and absentee voting. And so we have been very mindful to remind our students and remind our peers, our families to vote alternatively if they can. Of course, because COVID's spiking, but also because it's easier, they can do it earlier, and that will also helps turnout in a huge way.
All right, I think we were joined by a couple people, and Michael Norris. Hi, from the campus election engagement project.
Hi, everyone. I apologize for being late to the call. Thunderstorms and internet were not my friend today. I work with Campus Election Engagement Project with Daniel. I am actually the co-director of our project in the state of Florida, but am working with Daniel in the state of Georgia for the runoff. Most of my work has been with faculty, staff, and administrators, encouraging faculty members to share information about the election, both our candidate guides and our how to vote information with classes and then also working with student affairs professionals to share the information through student clubs and organizations, through Greek Life, and we're actually having some pretty good success working with faculty and staff on this particular election.
Does anybody else have questions for Daniel, Nasheen, and Michael from the Campus Election Engagement Project? And if not, we can move forward to voting from abroad and voting in the runoffs from abroad with Roy and Linda.
I guess I've got a question if that's all right.
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
So first of all, thank you for all of the work that you've done. This is incredible and really important. And it sounds especially exceptional in what's happened in Georgia. So congratulations and thank you for that. I guess the one detail I was going to ask about is registration, which if I'm remembering correctly, for new voters has to be done by the 7th of this month, if I'm getting my dates right. And I was just wondering how, especially as there's, people who could vote in the coming election who weren't old enough to vote in the last. And I was just wondering how that's going. You've already sounded very encouraging about that, but like, given how close it is to the deadline, just any general thoughts on how much of a difference that might make?
Who was that question directed to?
Oh, I guess to Daniel, who was kind of anyone's thoughts really, but yeah, I suppose the outreach projects thus far, that's the thing I've been worrying about most. And if anyone has opinions on that, I'd appreciate them.
Yeah, so your questions about just like kind of how we are managing outreach here in Georgia.
I guess it's specifically the like given how soon that deadline is, and how much a new set of voters who couldn't have voted in the last election, if there's just how much of a shift that's served so far, whether there's like portions of the voters that you were hoping to get to, but it's such a short deadline, and just how that dynamic has played out.
Yeah, so and that's a great question, because of course, we were served a deadline and it's pretty early, of course. We don't have same day registration here, unfortunately. So our registration deadline is almost a month before the actual election. Our deadline to register to vote is actually December 7th. So all pushes right now to get those 23,000 students registered have been underway. I know that there is a lot of postcards being sent to a lot of high school students. Just kind of like, it's kind of addressed to them, just saying, hey, please make sure you're registered if you're 17 and a half and you will be 18 before, the election in January 15th or January 5th is up. You can register to vote. But there's a lot of push right now, of course, to get them understanding what an absentee ballot is and voting early and voting in person as well. We have kind of been firing and all hands on deck right now, just completely since the general election. I believe now we're in the upper 900,000s of people who have actually requested absentee ballots here in Georgia.
Wow.
So it's starting to look very, promising that we'll be able to have a, of course, a large turnout. And that's not to say that all 900,000 ballots will be returned. Of course, sometimes they aren't returned or they're lost or, they're incorrect. Yeah, that's really awesome. We've reached 1 million now. Thank you, Linda. So there is a huge push. It's mostly virtual, of course, which I mean, and a lot of times, social media pushes and campaigns are very effective, especially when it comes to younger voters.
Thank you.
We do have a voter with us who can sort of illustrate how being a Georgia voter abroad is a little different from how you might have to, what your eligibility or what your process might be like back in Georgia. So if Parker is still with us, I don't know if Parker maybe would like to say a word about his experience as a Georgia voter in Finland.
Yeah, I can share real quick, and it'll feed right into Linda and the whole VFA crew. So basically, the state of Georgia, for overseas voters, there's two ways that you can actually request a ballot for absentee voting. One way you can do it is through the either Vote from Abroad or some other program to do the federal UCOVA application, the postcard application, or the Secretary of State had their own website for requesting absentee ballots, especially for this election. They had a dedicated site for it. So initially, I requested one through the Secretary of State's website. And when it was time for ballots to be sent, I reached out to my local election office and found out that they had mistakenly sent me one in the physical mail, attempting to all the way to Finland, because I had requested it through the Secretary of State's website rather than the Vote from Abroad or from another website you can use to request for overseas ballots specifically. So I had to go through and cancel that one and then request the other one, which they were very helpful with and got it all done in time, but a little bit of a hassle if you don't know exactly what you're doing.
That's a good segue, I think, into the importance of, if you are an overseas voter, of using Vote from Abroad. We are covered under a federal law called UOCAVA, which is a federal law that protects our right to vote from overseas. Would Roy or Linda like to take it from there?
Yep, here we go. So I'm going to start at the beginning though. There we go. So Roy, do you want to start, or do you want me to do the front end and you come in? Roy.
Sorry. Hi.
Okay. Can you guys? I'll just say real quick at the top of the thing. We work with an organization called votefromabroad.org, and we work on registering people from overseas, which is a very different process. So Roy is one of our volunteers, and what we created, because we couldn't have in-person events in many parts of the world this year, so we developed Zoom room one-on-one live voter assistance, and Roy is one of our enthusiastic young volunteers. And he's going to talk to you guys about kind of the mechanics of voting from abroad in Georgia and how different that is. So go ahead, Roy. I'll mute.
Sure, you can move on to that next slide. All right, so here's just okay, we can skip that overview. Basically, the first question is who can vote? That doesn't really change. You have to be 18 in order to vote. You do not have to have lived in the United States, at least for Georgia, when we're talking about the Georgia runoff. Under the Uokava Act in Georgia, you can vote even if your parents lived in the United States. Obviously, you have to be a citizen, but you can register through either the last place you lived or through your parents' living address. So definitely not have to have lived there, but you have to be a U.S. citizen. But this act, this Uokava Act, that was formed is meant to, it's a right, it's to protect our right to vote. Every American, whether that American lives in the United States or abroad, has the right to vote under the Uokava Act. But the mechanics, as Linda said, the way of voting is very different, and it varies by state. So that was a really big issue in the 2020 November general election, where we had to really explain and clarify for every single state how to vote there, because it varies greatly and there's so many different rules, and it's not just by state, it's also by county. But here, what's great is for the Georgia runoff is that we're dealing with one state. So there's generally just one set of deadlines, just the guidelines that Georgia itself has, and it's much more straightforward. And that's why our job now is more about the outreach because it's very easy and very quick to educate everyone about how to vote. There's less room for confusion, which is what we're really happy about. That's why our Zoom rooms are just doing better. It's less crowded than it was over the past few months. But definitely the outreach is something we're excited for. So yes, there's going to be a Georgia runoff election. You can skip to the next slide and we'll dive into the mechanics of how to vote. Yes. So just like I said before, we vote in our last residence. So even if people have lived in different states, the last state you lived in before you moved abroad is the state you'll vote in. Not just the last state, the last address. A lot of times people say that their address, they don't own any property there, or that, I don't know, the address is invalid. Like there's no actual residence there. It doesn't matter. You use that last address that you lived in the United States, and that's how you register. So yes, actually there are 3 steps or 4 steps, the R's. The first step, a lot of us have already done this before because you do it once in your life. You register to vote unless you were taken off, but usually you register once, and so new voters have to register again. If you're just a reoccurring voter and you're voting again, then you crest a ballot. But together, those can be done through the federal postcard application, the FPCA. It's something that can easily be navigated through the Vote From Abroad website. You go to Google Vote From Abroad, VFA, you see the first thing you can see is fill out your FPCA, because that's how it's such an important first step, filling out that FPCA. It can also register you together with requesting your ballot if you're new. And if you're not, we recommend people request their ballot every calendar year. After you've requested your ballot through this form, you should receive your ballot 45 days before the election. Mind the should, obviously there are mishaps, and states and counties don't always send it out in time, but that's when you're supposed to receive it. Obviously, if you sent it after 45 days, like when it's closer to the election, then it'll take a couple of days, but you're due to receive it. We recommend voters in majority of states, you can almost, I think in everyone, you can request your ballot to be received by email. And that's so much easier because there's less room for things to go awry. When the voter here spoke about initially having said that his ballot's going to be received by mail, and it's much easier when it's just by email. It's one of the great perks of 2020 and just the 21st century that you can receive ballots by email. Once you receive it by email or any other way, you have your ballot. The last step is to vote your ballot, and even then there are different ways to vote your ballot. So let's dive through to there. Let's dive into all the steps. So basically, you can request your, just I said, you can request your ballot through Vote from Abroad. There are other websites, but we really believe our website is very straightforward and it really helps you out. I'm just reading the comment here. Receiving ballots by email is not always available to domestic voters, but every overseas voter, yeah, that's correct. We're talking about overseas voters. Overseas voters can definitely get that option. For domestic voters, it's very different. First of all, also domestic voters, when we talk about absentee ballots, it does not mean the same thing exactly. The concept of voting by email, which does not exist in Georgia, but exists in other states, does not exist within the United States. So there are many differences that are adjusted in order to help out people where in-person voting is not an option. So their only option would be mail. Yes, you can request, no, that's okay. So yes, you can receive your email. So let's just guide through Georgia, because this is the runoff election that we're dealing with right now, and it's really important. You can actually check. A lot of people heading up to this election aren't sure if they're even registered. Some of these people vote in November, some have not, but a lot of times you get a lot of people who are confused. You can check your registration through the Georgia My Voter page section in the Georgia Secretary of State website. You can easily check your absentee ballot status, the date it's been requested, received, and then that way you know if you're set to vote or if you need to submit another FPCA or your first FPCA for that calendar year. So we always tell people first to check that site, even if they're quite certain, check that site first. Once you checked it, if the status is unclear, if you're not exactly sure, if you're completely registered, maybe you're not registered for this election, better be safe than sorry. We tell them, submit the FPCA. Same goes for people who just turned 18. I mean, they couldn't have been registered if they just turned 18 or if they didn't vote in November. This is just to be on the safe side. We recommend people, we really strongly recommend make sure that FPCA is there and they're fully registered for the right election. Sometimes people also, we see we want to submit it via email, definitely, for sure. That's the fastest way. You can submit your FPCA technically by mail or by fax, but by the quickest, most reliable way. And if it's possible, then why not? I mean, email is it should be the easiest way. It has the least room for problems. And deadline, 7th of December. This deadline is for registering. That's correct. It's this Monday. It's a really important deadline because from this Monday on forward, only people who are registered to vote can vote. This doesn't go for requesting your ballot if you're already registered. This just means that this Monday is the last time to register as a new voter. Okay, yes. Once you've sent out your FPCA and you're expecting it, your ballot, check your email, and also spam, because a lot of times it goes to spam. I can tell you that I personally, for the 2020 November general election, I put in 2 email addresses. You can do that. You can put a secondary email address, and one of them went to spam. And unfortunately, that was like my main address. So I only got that email a couple days after, I believe it was either September 18th or 19th, 45 days before the election mark. So that was a little disappointing, but yes, check your spam. You should receive it very promptly. It's also downloadable on My Voter page. Look for Yokava ballots. It's downloadable there if the Secretary of State has processed your FPCA. So you can always check there if it's available, but it's only going to be available if they process your FPCA. Definitely not available if you just sent in your FPCA to check your My Voter page, because they need to first, it needs to go through them. Otherwise, that's the only way you can actually receive your ballot. Okay, so you print your ballot. Obviously, in Georgia, as I said, we can't email it, we can't fax it, we can only deliver it by mail. So you print the ballot and you complete it. And then we're recommending voters to submit it as soon as possible. They need to be submitted by mail. No fax, no email, no online portal. Georgia, you can only submit your ballot by mail. It could be frustrating, but with these few easy steps, we can really make the process easier. You just have to make sure you notice some of these important deadlines. Okay, how do you return your ballot? So this is probably the most complicated part. Until now, we're pretty good with answering questions. Here it gets trickier because some countries, we're dealing as a vote from abroad, we're dealing with people in multitudes of countries, and not every country has a reliable postal service. And that's why we tell people, yes, first of all, if you want to submit it by postal mail, do it as soon as possible. As soon as possible. We recommended people to stop doing it on November 30th. So at this point in time, we're not even telling people, like, unless they have no other option, we're not telling people to use by postal mail, because we really don't know how your specific country's postal service, how fast it is, and if it's going to make it on time. And the last thing we want is for your ballot to not be counted. By courier is what we've always been recommending. It's fastest, it's most reliable, and we really recommend it. There's DHL, FedEx, UPS, there's a couple others, but these courier services, yes, it also says to waive signature requirement. We don't want, in these services, there is an option to request a signature requirement, but we do not recommend that at all, because then a lot of times the counties themselves will not sign and then they won't accept your ballot. So it's important to waive that. And it needs to be postmarked by January 5th, received by January 8th. These deadlines are nice and all, and we should remember them. Honestly, it's great that we can submit it that far, but we tell people do it as soon as possible, By Christmas Eve generally is our deadline, because you need to think about how long it takes by courier. It's not one single day, but generally as soon as possible. If you already have your ballot, don't hesitate, send it out. Send it out. Okay, we can keep going. Still no ballot, deadline looming. This is where we get to FWABs. FWABs are a great thing, a great option. It's a federal write-in absentee ballot. You can download it from Vote From Abroad/Georgia. There's step-by-step instructions in submitting your FWAB. You can even complete it online and download it. If there's a way to complete it on FEAP, for example, but on Vote From Abroad, it's also pretty straightforward. Basically, this write-in absentee ballot is the same every single year in terms of its format. It's not specific to this election, and it's not specific to a state. Actually, you fill in your information about who you're voting. There's a place to put not now, but the president, the vice president. Usually now we're talking about senators, but there's a place to put in who you're voting for. It's this standard sheet where you write in the name. There's no places to tick. And we recommend people to submit this if they're having problems, if they think they won't make it in time, especially if they haven't received their ballot yet, but they have requested and they know that the FPCA is out there and they still haven't received, not by email, not by mail, and they really, really are stressed. Look, it's a great option. And if we'd recommend first checking if we know it's processed to see if it's it's downloadable on My Voter page, but if it's not, then FWAB, great option. It needs to be submitted by mail. It's the same rules for the regular the regular state ballot apply to the federal write-in absentee ballot as well. Same rules in terms of how to submit your ballot. So right here, submit it by mail as well. Cross the finish line. Yes. Make sure, go to this site and make sure it was received and accepted. We want to make sure they accepted your ballot, that it was counted. If it wasn't, why wasn't it counted? You can always call your secretary, you can always call your county, your specific county, and try to figure it out. But they're usually, they're going to send out an email if there's any sort of problem, especially if it has to do with your signature. And this is not every state. Luckily, Georgia is one of those states that allows for ballot curing. You can cure your signature in case there were any problems, in case there was a mismatch or they weren't able to read it. There are plenty of potential problems with signatures. And that's why we recommend people to stay on top of that. First of all, make sure their first signature is correct, but not to fret, because you can always cure your ballot. Again, there's a deadline. You can't cure your ballot till forever. We have to announce a winner at some point. We have to count those ballots. We all remember how frustrating it was to wait for the winner in the election this year. We don't want that again. We want to know as soon as possible. Cure your ballot as soon as possible. Deadline, January 8th, 2021.
Great. I think that's it for the voter mechanics. Thank you, Roy. That was very comprehensive. Very good. I think Victoria is going to talk to us a little bit more now on how we can help get the word out. Is that right?
We have a couple questions on the chat.
Okay, sorry, I can't see the chat. Yeah.
Tilly, do you want to ask them? I can
Oh.
read them out otherwise.
All right, I see them. How is citizenship verified? That is a good question. Well, how does citizenship verified? You wouldn't see, for example, if you log into my voter page, you wouldn't see anything come up. You will not be listed as a voter if you're not a citizen. So only citizens will be able to see any sort of status. Obviously, if you're not registered, you won't be there as well, but you can try to register and see, but you need to be a US citizen in order to vote.
And the FPCA has a section where it will ask for identification. All states are different. Some will ask for social security number, some will ask for a birth date, but there's an oath that you sign at the bottom that says, that you commit to the fact that you're an American citizen and that you are voting in good faith and that you are not voting in any other states. But there is no.
You need a state issued ID or a social security number.
Or Social Security.
Yeah.
Social security. Does the ballot envelope have to be stamped by January 5th or does it have to be received by them? It has to be postmarked by January 5th, postmarked. So stamped, yes.
But is it a sort of an honor system if you sign the oath that you are a citizen? I mean, somebody who would be dishonest might sign that they're a citizen when they aren't. Is that double checked anyway?
They have to submit a social security number. So they'd be committing a felony or worse if they.
It's usually either the social security number or a driver's license, but of course I haven't been doing the Georgia specific registration. But in general, that's the kind of information they ask for. Sometimes people, if they don't have either an in-state driver's license or a social security number, people can submit additional documentation. So I've had voters who were successful submitting passport copies. Obviously, if you have a passport, you're a citizen. So this is part of the area where I think it really comes back to the local election officials because they will verify each application, right? So if they need additional information, if they have additional questions about a voter and whether or not they're eligible, they will do that follow-up.
Definitely. They look at all the voter information much before they even process that actual ballot. Also, there was a question here, does the Postal Service have the obligation to get ballots sent January 5th, delivered by January 8th? Good question. Actually, no, the Postal Service, and especially when we're talking about any postal service in any country, are not obligated. They're not part of the actual election. They're submitting an independent package, envelope, letter, whatever. Obviously, it's your it's our responsibility to make sure we vote early. And that's why we're also not recommending regular postal mail because we don't know how long it'll take. And there's no guarantee to receive it. And even if they list a guarantee, there's always, it can be received later. Yeah.
It's the Christmas season and there's lots of, well, I don't know if anyone's doing Christmas cards this year, but Christmas season with all the parcels and everything that's going on, it's going to be busy. So we always, in the general, we recommended people return as soon as possible, but now we're also saying same, as soon as possible. Courier, if you can afford it, just whatever you can do to get it in as soon as you can. Any other questions for us? No, Victoria, do you want to talk about, oops, we did, yeah.
Yeah, well, we just wanted to say a word about exactly this, how, especially since we have a call with mostly non-Georgia voters with a few exceptions, what can you do for these runoff Senate elections as a non-Georgia voter? And the most important thing is two things. First of all, social media. Reach out to your network, spread the word about the registration deadline that's coming up on Monday, especially. And more generally, directing people to vote from abroad, because it's a truly wonderful tool for Americans abroad. As Roy mentioned, it's different in every state. The rules are different from voting in the US. It can be pretty overwhelming. So having that resource, I think it's very important to get the word out about Vote from Abroad. and in particular, the runoff election. And the second one is, well, there's social media, and then there's actual social action, your actual network. Reach out to Georgia voters you know. You probably have friends in Georgia, maybe even family in Georgia. Spread the word. That's really the best we can do as people who have a stake in this election but don't vote in this election. So yeah, I think that's the key message on our end.
I would only add that, Vote from Abroad works really hard to put out all the voter mechanics, the voter rules, the voter information, much like CWP does those fantastic voting guides. We try to put out things that are just purely voting advocacy and how to do this, because it's not easy from abroad. And a lot of times we spend a lot of time normally with study abroad students, and this year there hasn't been much study abroad, but students and young people find it challenging to figure out how to access the information that they need to do this. And they're maybe unfamiliar with the postal system. And, we find that it's just helpful to be able to give that information to them as much as possible.
Oh, and one last thing, Daniel mentioned about the importance of voting from abroad, despite the difficulties. Daniel mentioned that the margin of victory in Georgia was very small in the general election, 12,000 votes. The vote from abroad in Georgia was above the margin of victory. That's very important to realize, that if no Georgian abroad had voted, then the election result would have been different. So, I think that that's an encouraging message for people to realize their vote really does count from abroad. And then Tilly has a question.
I have a question. I wonder about phone banking, because the only way I've been able to do it is joining up to the Georgia campaign, but that means in Paris, it's from midnight to 3 o'clock in the morning, which is sometimes a little problematic. Do you need us to participate in phone banking, or do you have such an incredible army of people already doing it that you don't need us?
I can speak for the organizations that we work with abroad. I know have done their phone banking already. I know that one of the ladies that I work very closely with, Elizabeth Kelly, has done a huge job organizing what's called the Voting Champion Project, which is about relational organizing and reaching out to your network. And I'm going to put the toolkit that she's developed for Georgia in the website, in the chat box. There's a ton of different tools on there. And I know one of the things she was working on was vetting a list of opportunities of ways you can volunteer from abroad to get involved in the US. And I would be remiss if I did not say, if anyone is able or and has any ability to do so, donating to our friends at Campus Election Engagement Project is always welcome. They are a fantastic organization that I know Laura works a lot with them. I'm going to put their donation link in there as well. But they do a huge amount of work engaging young people. And one of the facts that we know about voting is that the younger you start to vote, the more likely you are to vote throughout your life. And that's why we wanted to try to put together this thing for students and for young people, because engaging people from a young age in democracy is a really, really important part of a representational democracy, for them to know what goes on and how to vote. So if you want to, if you look at that Voting Champion Toolkit, there should be a list of vetted volunteer opportunities on there as well. And there's also some social media posts and things you can share, all nonpartisan, to just promote voting.
I'd also like to add the importance of social media, just playing off of what Victoria said earlier. We're talking here about the Youth Caucus. We're talking about youth. We're talking about young voters who I can assure you spend so many hours of their day on their phones. I mean, before the coronavirus pandemic, scientists have been saying that we all spend at least 5 hours a day on our phones. This is before the coronavirus pandemic, which has unfortunately taken so many jobs, and people are staying at their homes. And a lot of people, I'm guessing, what are they doing right now? On their phones, on their computers, on social media, because it's I can understand that. I think we all can understand the need to stay active and stay social and to interact with other people. It is, an innate part of who we are as humans. So that's where social media comes to play, how critically important, how vital it is, because it is so accessible. It is immediate. I mean, the powers of social media are completely, I mean, wow. They wow me every single time I open Instagram and I see how there are so many marketing opportunities from Vote From Abroad, where I see how it pops up just because I like this one post. I shared this one comment, how it just knows what you like, what content you follow, and it will continue to provide you that content. It can also be used, in negative ways, but in this case, this could be a very positive thing, and we can spread the word very easily with social media. One share one post, and it can really, you can unknowingly have just let like dozens of people know about what you posted, about what you stand for. So it's huge. It's so important.
So I suggest that you start a class for seniors in social media.
You know what? We have one. We have a little how to do social media guide on that toolkit. It's a very beginning guide, but there's some videos on there that you can watch on YouTube that tell you how to do different things on social media. And we are looking at doing a training for those of us who are not quite as au fait as some of our younger colleagues. We will work on that a little harder.
That's excellent.
No, but what I've come across most is with mobile and so on, that you had to have a US telephone number before they would even let you in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have a lot of things through Democrats Abroad that you can do, but if you really want to join in, and I've gone through that whole list and ended up donating because I was so frustrated that I couldn't participate. But the one thing we can do is phone banking. And so I'll just keep working on that.
Thanks so much, Tilly. Thank you for your support. And thank you, everyone. Thank you to our friends at the Campus Election Engagement Project. It's really awesome to have Daniel and Michael and I think
you had to go.
Yeah, she had to go. But anyway, so great to have you guys with us today. And thank you so much, Roy and Linda from votefromabroad.org. And thank you so much, the Youth Caucus, Victoria and Max, for hosting this today. So thank you.
Thank you so much for everyone for being here. And keep up the good work. Congratulations. What you're doing is amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let's
All right, spread the word.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for
Bye,
having us.
everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And I'm